no one in China was allowed to own gold until it was legalized in 2002. And that was the point where the Shanghai Gold Exchange opened, which facilitated the delivery of gold to the public. So we had this period between 1983 and 2000 when China's state acquired gold. And so where did it come from? Well, we had a massive bear market between those dates. And not only that, but it was quite clear that quite a lot of central bank gold held in the West had actually gone out on lease, never to be returned. This was estimated by Frank Venerosa to be somewhere between 10 and 14,000 tons. In other words, between a third and a half of all central bank gold was out on lease, sold into the market, and not coming back. Now, Venerosa reckoned that it was probably adorning the necks of Asian women. I think it's another story. I think the People's Bank of China was in there quietly picking it up. I estimate, now I have no firm figures on this at all, and I have to say that the thing about the gold market, as we all should know, is that nobody wants to say that they actually own any gold. They want to keep it secret. I'm not talking about individuals, I'm also talking about governments. And this is the whole thing. I think the US government is a prime example. I mean, we keep on wondering how much gold they've actually got, and what do they say? Nothing. So when it comes to China, I reckon that they'd accumulated roughly 20,000 tons between 1983 and that year, 2002. Now, since then, of course, the Chinese government has continued to accumulate gold. Not only that, but mine output is the thick end of 10,000 tons. I mean, China invested hugely in its own gold mine production and rapidly became the largest producer nation by far, eclipsing South Africa, which was declining quite rapidly as it happened back in the 1990s and into the early noughties. And the other thing, of course, is that state-owned refiners were bringing in doré from abroad. I mean, particularly, obviously, Mongolia, paying them for the doré. And where did the gold go? Didn't leave China. I mean, as far as the relationship between gold and China is that China is Hotel California. It comes in, that's no problem at all, but it can't get out. So that has been the policy. Why is it this policy? It's this policy because the Chinese understand the importance of gold. Now, since the SGE opened, over 27,000 tons of gold has been delivered into private hands. Now, some of that would have returned into the Baltic system as scrap. But I don't care, because that just gets redistributed elsewhere. It's not going out of China. And on top of that, of course, you've got the banks. The banks run gold accumulation plans for their depositors. And this gold is not delivered out of the Shanghai Gold Exchange. It is stored within the Shanghai Gold Exchange. So we don't know how much gold there is there, but I should think it's quite a lot. I pencil in a figure about 10,000 tons. Now, I think that might underestimate the situation for the very simple reason that household savings rate is in the order of, it's over 30%. And that's the equivalent of $5 trillion a year. Now, it used to go into off-plan apartment buildings and stuff. That's gone. Let's forget that. Stock market, maybe a little bit, but I think that's got very, very limited appeal. I mean, really, and then the other thing you've seen, I mean, mostly it's been accumulating as deposits on the bank's bank accounts, but deposit accounts. But for the last, year or two, the People's Bank has been reducing its main interest rates, and the bank's with it. And so what does the housewife do? Well, the answer is that she opens a gold accumulation plan, which she can do for as little as 500 yuan, which is less than $100. This is actually very important. If you take this all together, we are, in my estimation, looking at a figure like 75,000 tons out of a total of a bit less than 200,000 tons of above-ground gold stocks. China has cornered the gold market. That's what it boils down to. Because it's not just China. You've got India, which has got massive amounts of bullion held in the form of jewelry. I mean, most of the Chinese public gold is actually jewelry as well. You've also got Russia. Now, I understand on pretty good authority that Russia's got 2 sovereign wealth funds, which have a total of about 10,000 tons of gold between them. And then you've got the Russian Central Bank, which has got a further, 2.3 thousand tons, whatever. You've also got the whole of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS, all their central banks. Presumably they've got sovereign wealth funds as well. Now, all this is meaning that the liquidity we have here is minimal. Now, let's look at the demand side. So far, this hasn't mattered because nobody wants to buy gold. I mean, any investment manager isn't going to earn fees by putting his punters into gold. He would rather put them into something which is going to pay him a bit more. And not only that, but the regulators are on his side. The regulators turn around and say, physical metals are not regulated investments. But of course, this is why they set up ETFs, to get around this regulatory hurdle. But the ETFs are beginning to grow. People are beginning to buy into them slowly. But the other thing, which I think is very important on the demand side, is that we now see analysts at the major US banks turning around and saying, we believe gold's going at 4,000, whatever. Whatever their reasons, I don't care. I mean, they don't know what they're talking about, I reckon. That's my default assumption anyway. But, the fact that they are saying it, and the fact that the investment managers within those banks, who are typically managing or responsible for over $1 trillion, we're looking at banks like Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Citibank, Citicorp, whatever they call themselves now, etc. We're talking about huge numbers. They haven't got any. I don't think they necessarily know how to get it, actually. This is interesting. When you look at the complete investment management universe around the world, it is estimated that portfolios are worth some $300 trillion. $300 trillion. Now, gold ownership of that, you just look at ETFs and maybe sort of make a few assumptions about, bullion being stored and so on. But, basically it's ETFs and nothing else. It's less than 0.5% of that. I mean, it really is. Less than 0.5% is in gold. And yet you've got these behemoths in America now thinking, we better buy some of this. Now, to put it into context, my China story suggests that the amount of liquidity, which is unspoken for, including jewelry in the West, is probably in the region of about 40 to 45,000 tons. That's all. That's it. We can see what's in the vaults. We can't see what's in the Swiss vaults. That's something I don't know. Someone gives me a number, it'd be super. But I think quite sensibly the Swiss don't produce these numbers. That's what I would assume anyway. But it does mean that if a 1% increase in allocation, portfolio allocation of that 300 trillion was to take place at current prices, you're looking at 25,000 tons. Where's it going to come from? I mean, the answer basically is that we're heading for the most enormous crisis in the gold market. And the figures are very different for silver because being an industrial metal, etc., but the same principle applies. The liquidity is just simply not there, which is why it's sort of hurdling up $1 at a time at the moment. This is a squeeze on the system. This is very serious. And I think so, I can understand your punter selling off $1,000 below the current level and maybe living to regret it. I can understand that. But the bit he's missing basically is he's going to be out of the market on the biggest, sharpest squeeze probably seen in history. I think that's where we're heading.